Margaret had always been a woman who commanded rooms with her presence. At 58, she had built Henderson Industries from a small family business into one of the region's most respected companies. Her silver hair was always perfectly styled, her suits impeccably tailored, and her handshake firm enough to seal million-dollar deals. But none of that mattered now as she sat in the rehabilitation center's garden, watching her daughter Sarah struggle with the reality that had become their new normal. The accident had happened 6 months ago. A drunk driver running a red light had changed everything in an instant. Sarah, who had been 25 and full of dreams of becoming a teacher, was now confined to a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down. The vibrant young woman who used to dance through life had retreated into silence, building walls that even Margaret's love couldn't penetrate. The physical therapy session went well today, Margaret said gently, placing her hand on Sarah's shoulder. Dr. Mitchell says you're making progress with your upper body strength. Sarah turned away from her mother's touch, staring across the manicured lawn toward the old barns that dotted the property. The rehabilitation center had once been a working farm, and the rustic building served as a reminder of simpler times when problems seemed more manageable. Progress toward what exactly? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. What's the point of getting stronger when I'll never walk again, never dance again, never feel whole again? Margaret felt her heart break a little more each day, watching her daughter disappear into this darkness. She had tried everything: professional counselors, support groups, even taking time away from the company to be here every day. Nothing seemed to reach the spirited girl she had raised. That's when she noticed him. David was 32 years old, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of honest work. He was a single father who worked part-time as a maintenance supervisor at the center while caring for his 8-year-old son, Tommy. His wife had passed away from cancer 3 years earlier, leaving him to navigate parenthood alone while carrying his own grief. David had a way of moving through the world that caught Margaret's attention. He wasn't rushing from task to task like most people. Instead, he seemed to notice things others missed. He would pause to help an elderly resident adjust their blanket, or listen patiently when someone wanted to share a story about their grandchildren. One afternoon, Margaret watched as David approached Sarah's wheelchair. Her daughter had positioned herself in the far corner of the garden, as far from other people as possible. Most staff members and visitors had learned to give Sarah space, but David walked over with the easy confidence of someone who wasn't afraid of difficult conversations. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, gesturing to the bench near Sarah's chair. Sarah shrugged without looking at him, which David seemed to take as permission. He settled onto the weathered wooden bench and pulled out his lunch, a simple sandwich wrapped in brown paper. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he said after taking a bite. "My son Tommy loves days like this. He's 8 and still believes every sunny day was made especially for him." Sarah glanced at him sideways but didn't respond. "I lost my wife 3 years ago." David continued in the same conversational tone as if he were discussing the weather. "Cancer. For the longest time I thought the world had ended. Tommy kept asking when Mommy was coming home, and I had no idea how to explain that sometimes life just changes everything in ways we never expected." This time Sarah turned to look at him more directly, though she still didn't speak. "The thing is," David said, taking another bite of his sandwich, "I spent so much time focused on what we had lost that I almost missed what we still had. It took Tommy to show me that we were still a family, just a different kind than we had planned." Margaret watched from across the garden, feeling something shift in her chest. This man was talking to her daughter, not at her. He wasn't trying to fix anything or offer empty reassurances. He was simply sharing his own story and letting Sarah decide what to do with it. "I don't know what it's like to be in your situation," David continued, "but I do know what it's like to feel like your life is over. And I know what it's like to discover that maybe it isn't over, just different than you thought it would be." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and uncertain. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep going when everything you planned for is gone?" David considered this question seriously, as if it deserved his full attention. "One day at a time," he said eventually. "Some days 1 hour at a time. And I lean on people who care about me even when I don't feel like I deserve their care." Margaret felt tears prick at her eyes. This stranger had managed to get Sarah talking in 5 minutes, something she hadn't been able to accomplish in weeks. Over the following days, Margaret found herself looking forward to David's brief conversations with Sarah. He never stayed long, never pushed too hard, but he always left Sarah looking a little less alone. Margaret began to understand that this man possessed something rare in their world, genuine kindness without expectation of anything in return. One evening, as Margaret was leaving the center, she encountered David in the parking lot. His old pickup truck wouldn't start, and he was looking under the hood with the resigned expression of someone who had faced this problem before. "Car trouble?" Margaret asked, approaching him. "Battery, I think," David replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's been acting up for weeks. I keep meaning to replace it, but between Tommy's school expenses and everything else, it keeps getting pushed to the back of the list." Without hesitation, Margaret pulled out her phone. "Let me call my mechanic. He can be here in 30 minutes. David looked uncomfortable. "I appreciate the offer, Mrs. Henderson, but I can't afford." "Consider it a thank you," Margaret interrupted gently. "What you've been doing for Sarah, talking with her, listening to her, it means more than you know." David was quiet for a moment, studying Margaret's face as if trying to determine her motives. "She's a remarkable young woman," he said finally. "She's going through something terrible, but I can see her strength underneath all that pain. She reminds me of my wife in that way. Linda had this inner toughness that couldn't be broken no matter what life threw at her." Margaret felt something loosen in her chest. For months she had been so focused on Sarah's limitations, on what her daughter couldn't do anymore, that she had forgotten to see her daughter's inherent strength. "I think I've been approaching this all wrong," Margaret admitted. "I've been trying so hard to fix everything that I forgot to just be with her." "Being with someone is sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer," David said. "When Linda was sick, I spent so much energy trying to find cures and treatments that I almost missed the precious time we had left together. The moments that mattered most weren't in doctors' offices or hospitals. They were the quiet evenings when we just held hands and talked about ordinary things." Margaret's mechanic arrived and quickly diagnosed and replaced David's battery. As David tried to thank her, Margaret waved away his gratitude. "You've given my daughter something I couldn't," she said. "Hope. That's worth more than a car battery." The next day, Margaret made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of her usual designer suit, she wore comfortable slacks and a soft sweater. Instead of rushing through her visit with Sarah, she brought a thermos of coffee and settled into the garden chair beside her daughter's wheelchair. "Tell me about the young man you've been talking with," Margaret said. Sarah looked surprised by the question. "David? You mean David?" "Yes. He seems like a good person." Sarah was quiet for a moment, as if considering how to respond. "He doesn't treat me like I'm broken," she said eventually. "Everyone else either stares at the wheelchair or works so hard to avoid looking at it that it becomes this huge thing between us. But David just talks to me like I'm still me." Margaret felt a pang of recognition. Had she been doing that too? Focusing so much on Sarah's disability that she had forgotten to see her daughter as a whole person? "He is a good man," Margaret agreed. "He told me about losing his wife. That must have been devastating." "It was. But he didn't let it make him bitter. He still believes in kindness and helping people. His son is lucky to have him." Margaret heard something in Sarah's voice that she hadn't heard in months, a note of warmth, of genuine interest in someone else's well-being. Over the following weeks, Margaret began to see changes in Sarah. Small changes, but meaningful ones. Sarah started participating more actively in her physical therapy sessions. She began eating regular meals again instead of picking at her food. Most importantly, she started talking not just to David but to other patients and staff members. Margaret realized that David's gift hadn't been some profound wisdom or professional expertise. His gift had been treating Sarah like a person worthy of friendship and conversation. He had seen past her wheelchair to the intelligent, compassionate woman she had always been. One afternoon, Margaret found David teaching Sarah how to play chess in the center's recreation room. His son Tommy was there too, working on homework at a nearby table. The scene was so natural, so comfortable, that it took Margaret's breath away. "Your move," David said to Sarah, who was studying the board with intense concentration. "I'm thinking," Sarah replied with more animation than Margaret had seen from her in months. "This is harder than I